Congressman, I'm going to start with the big, beautiful bill. You voted for the big, beautiful bill. Tell me about this. What's the upside of this bill?
Well, the upside of the bill is that it contains so many demands that Americans gave us last November. They wanted to see the border secured. They wanted us to unleash American energy. They wanted to make sure the American way of life was preserved. And this bill, while not perfect, no bill's perfect, met the demands of most of the American people.
Well, I got to ask you about some of the concerns that some folks do have about Medicaid. Should folks out there be concerned? Rural hospitals. What's your take on this?
There's been so much mismessaging about what is in that bill in terms of Medicaid. We'll use that as an example. Folks want to believe that just because the president put his signature on that bill, that instantly millions of people would be kicked off of Medicaid, and that's just simply not the case. What we did in Medicaid reform is to put some accountabilities in place. And yes, we remove some categories of folks that most Americans would agree should not be on the Medicaid rolls. For example, if someone is able-bodied and childless, they should be expected to work or to make some sort of contribution to society in order to receive those benefits. That's wildly popular with Americans. Most Americans agree that taxpayers should not be funding health care for illegal aliens. And then there are also a number of folks that we've recognized through audits over time that should not be on Medicaid in the first place. There were either mistakes made that put them on the Medicaid rolls, or there was some sort of fraudulent activity that put them on the Medicaid rolls.
So if you're a good, honest citizen out there, you're on Medicaid and you rely on it for your health care, you really should be able to have faith it's still going to be there for you.
There is nothing about what was in H.R. 1 that takes anyone off of Medicaid or changes their status unless they can work and choose not to, they're illegal, or they should not be on there in the first place. There's nothing about that bill that changes anyone's eligibility based off of their health condition or their income, which has just been so widely mismessaged.
All right, the bill rescinds some of the money that was put out there for the National Park Service. I know a lot of folks here are really concerned about the Blue Ridge Parkway opening back up. You have sat down with the Interior Secretary Doug Burgum to talk about speeding up that process. What is the status or the timeline for this now?
Well, the original timeline that I was given was 8 years for completion of the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is just unacceptable given the fact that our economy in western North Carolina is so dependent on that Blue Ridge Parkway. Right. And I met with a number of folks here locally with the Blue Ridge Parkway that are very meaningful and want to do a great job, but it became apparent to me early in that conversation I wasn't talking to the right folks, and so I went straight to the Secretary of Interior and had a very solid heart-to-heart conversation on the necessity to accelerate the reconstruction of the Blue Ridge Parkway, because our local governments are dependent on the income generated from tourism, as well as so many businesses here in western North Carolina. And I don't have a new timeline.
Right.
But I'm certainly convinced after that conversation with the Interior Secretary that western North Carolina's concerns are heard, and we'll see an accelerated recovery schedule as a result.
All right. The House went into recess about a week ago. Many believe that was to avoid dealing with some of the questions related to the Epstein files. I mean, is that accurate?
I don't know if that was accurate or not. Most of our business for the week had been resolved. There are a number of issues that we need to address back in our districts. And by the way, I don't use the word recess. There's no recess about it. We're wide open back in the districts in the period that we're not in Washington, D.C.
Right. So just because you're not in D.C. doesn't mean you're not working.
That's right.
Okay, I hear you. Tariffs. Obviously, that's a big story on the front page, front burner today. August 1st, the deadline today, set by President Trump. Some went into effect today. Some are scheduled to go into effect in about a week, August 7th. What do you anticipate will be the effect for consumers in Western North Carolina?
First of all, I think we have to recognize that President Trump campaigned on the fact that he would be leveraging tariffs to restore America's economic power in the world. And so it was no surprise when they elected him. Americans, by and large, elected President Trump on the basis that he would strengthen our economic power, and tariffs would be one tool that he'd use to do that. I think that we are beginning to see some of the results of that. One of the things that you don't hear talked about at this point is CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, expects that the current impact on tariffs to the American debt will be $2.6 trillion over the next decade. We've got nearly $400 billion in the bank now that have been collected through tariffs. And I expect that what we're going to see is continued negotiation between the White House and foreign powers on how to make America more competitive, how to make our businesses more competitive, and how to create more jobs in America that would further strengthen our economy.
And you think this is going to help lead to that?
I certainly believe that we are seeing the early signs that this is going to lead to that. There have been deals struck already. The biggest thing is we now have the attention of foreign leaders that we have not had before in terms of our seriousness about protecting the American economy.
Well, one of the concerns is about manufacturing. Do you believe this bill will help bring more manufacturing back to the United States?
I most certainly believe that it will. I'm already hearing from manufacturers that are looking to relocate places from abroad back into the United States. It would be ideal if we were able to give them a time frame in order to do that, because you don't just go build a factory overnight. But there are no ideal circumstances. President Trump has 4 years to execute the plan that he promised Americans. But I certainly believe that we're going to see a stronger America as a result of that. But tariffs is not the only tool to build our economy, and that's the thing I think most folks are not considering. We also have a regulatory environment that needs to be changed. We also have a workforce issue that needs to be changed. We also have a tax structure that needed changing. All of those are things that go into the equation of building a strong economy. We saw that happen here in North Carolina. You know, I served 6 years in the North Carolina Senate. I helped take over a legislature that was deeply in debt. And we did all of the things I just described to you and saw our economy flourish, jobs increase, and we're able to reestablish our fiscal footing as a result of that. I've told folks many times one of the reasons I ran for Congress is because I know how to build an economy. I've seen it work. I've been a part of that here in North Carolina. And I continue to tell folks in Washington, D.C. that we need more NC in D.C. We need to do the same things in Washington, D.C. that were successful here in North Carolina.
Well, on the flip side, let me ask you, there are companies like Walmart, General Motors, that have all said they've been eating some of the costs of these tariffs, which they consider temporary in terms of eating the costs. At some point, are you concerned they're going to have to pass them on to American consumers?
I've heard from a lot of folks that they recognize that there will be temporary adjustments that are necessary. That's part of creating change. Change always creates some discomfort. And even sometimes, Charles, things get worse before they get better. That's part of what in business we call the change curve. I believe that the president's strategy that the American people wildly adopted is a solid one if we can just see it through.
Well, I asked you about tariffs like about a year ago. It was during the campaign, the late stage of the campaign. And you told me you trust President Trump 100% on tariffs. Do you stand by that statement?
I certainly do. I trust him more today than I did then, because we're beginning to see the results of what he promised Americans. We're generating revenue. We're seeing jobs created in America. The last few months' jobs reports have been very favorable, and I believe the American people are more confident in his overall economic strategy today than they were when they elected him into office.
Are you worried about inflation at all?
We're always concerned about inflation, but I believe that we're beginning to rein back the spending of the federal government that is really the catalyst behind the inflation that we've seen over the last several years.
All right, a year from now, you will be in the final months of a midterm campaign for re-election. How are you feeling about it?
I feel great, but my focus, though, Charles, is on being the best representative to Western North Carolina that I can possibly be, to take our voice to Washington, D.C. And if I do a good enough job with that, I believe the folks will choose to send me back to Washington, D.C. So I'm more focused on doing the job I've been elected to do than I am trying to create some sort of a campaign.
All right. Congressman Chuck Edwards, thank you.